Sometimes the Bible tells us things, so we won't settle for less. For instance, when Jesus says, "Be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect." But when James says that we need to believe and not doubt, that's not just a bar to aim for. And then he says, unless we do, we won't receive anything from God. This is Looking Intently. I put out short videos on the Bible, and right now I'm going through the book of James. To catch up on any past ones, click the link in the upper right, and to make sure you don't miss any new ones, click the subscribe button and that bell icon in the lower right. Well, James has talked about the fact that we need to face trials with joy, and he knows that's going to take some wisdom. So he tells us in verse 5, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But then he adds one qualification. He says, but when you ask, you must believe and not doubt. Because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. You must believe and not doubt. The New American Standard says you must ask in faith without any doubting. And last time we looked at this idea, well, how's this fit then with that father who brings his demon-possessed son to the disciples when Jesus isn't around at first and they can't heal him? So his belief is a little shaken. And when Jesus comes, he says, if you can do anything, and Jesus replies, if, all things are possible to him who believes. The father responds with, I believe, help my unbelief. I've got some belief, I've got some unbelief. Jesus heals his son. James says, if you have any doubt, you won't get not only wisdom, you won't get anything you ask for. How do those fit together? Well, the way to answer that is going back to that, what I call Dictionary of James. There's a couple key words here that we need to understand. And it's not easy with the English translations that we have. Generally, they do a great job, but here we need to dig a little deeper. The first word is believe. In the original Greek language, there's one verb for this idea of belief or faith. We can translate it either way in English. There's one Greek noun. And then whenever you see the Greek verb, it has to be some form of believe or believing, because there is no verb form for faith, faithing. But realize, again, it's the same Greek word. So there's no inherent difference between belief and faith. But we've sort of come to use them differently. When we think of belief, often we limit it to, what I believe in my mind, I agree to mentally, I have confidence in the facts. And then faith is I'm acting out on that, the implications of it, I'm trusting God. Well, James does the same thing. He knows there's no inherent difference, but he uses the words. When he wants to convey the idea of just this mental assent, what we might call belief, well, he uses the verb form. We see this in chapter 2, verse 19, where he says, even the demons believe. They don't have any faith in God, but they do believe there is a God. They believe he exists. And so he uses the verb form to convey that. And then when he wants to convey that fuller idea of acting on, living out the implications of our belief, he uses the noun form. And we see that in that, well-known discussion he gives of faith without works is dead. Well, the word here in chapter 1, verse 6 is the noun form. The problem is the NIV, they're taking an approach of translating it's called thought for thought. We want to convey the basic thought, and so they look at it and say, the thought of asking in faith is believing. Yes, but not the way James uses that word. And so it does need to be ask in faith, because James is conveying it doesn't mean just ask in confidence that God has an answer and can give it. It's ask with this commitment that I will follow your answer, God, whatever it is. And that's the same thing he means when he says ask in faith without any doubting. That word for doubt, again, the word can be translated that. And if faith was implying confidence, well, then the word should be translated doubt, sort of what we would think of as unbelief. But with the word faith conveying the idea of commitment, you need to examine, all right, what's the best way to translate this Greek word, doubt, that's translated here, doubt. And when you do a little study, you find out it can be translated in other ways. This is not the word that's used in that passage about the Father where he says, I believe, help my unbelief. No, it's not that at all. It's the word that's used in passages like 1 Corinthians 6, verse 5, where it says, is it so that there is not among you one wise man who will be able to decide between his brethren? The NIV says, judge a dispute. So it's an idea of weighing things and like, all right, is this a good answer or not? Is this, what's the best? Same thing in Jude verse 9. It says there, Michael the archangel, when he disputed with the devil about the body of Moses. The ESV says he was contending with the devil. So you get this idea of, it's judging. Is this a good answer or not? It's disputing. I don't like the answer. Well, take that and apply to what James is saying. If you want to receive wisdom from God or anything, when you ask, you have to ask in faith. Not just confidence, but commitment, without any doubting. He's not talking about unbelief. He's saying without any sense of, God, I'm going to weigh your answer and see if I like it or not. God, if you give me this answer, I'm not going to follow it. I'm going to contend against it. I'm going to dispute with it. That gives a whole different meaning to this passage, doesn't it? And that's why I say I think this is a key passage in the Bible. This is our foundational approach, the humility we should have before God. That God, whenever I come before you, I'm coming before you in faith, this commitment, without any sense of I'll see whether I like what you have to say or what direction you give me. And again, I tell you, the study that I did to dig into these, you can go a long way with just these 3 free resources that I list in this video here. I'll put the link to that site is where links go. Check out that video. It will help you in your study. You want to take the time to do it. Well, let's apply this last lesson here, as I think about asking God for wisdom. I'm facing a difficult situation. I've got, a big decision to make that has some big implications. All right, when I ask, am I truly and totally committed to what he says? Am I open to it? Am I surrendered to it no matter what? Think about in general, my life in general, but think about a specific situation or different areas. I might be prone to be more surrendered to God in one than the other. Where am I and what do I need to do to be more committed, more open to him no matter what? Obviously, a key to that always is getting into his word, and the key to that is reading the good book like a good book.